Hey everybody, Shane at Moto Solutions. Today I have a 2007 GSX-R1000 and this bike's a little bit different. It's a track bike. He's got different suspension on it. This bodywork right here, it's all fiberglass. If you notice, there's no headlights. This bike is strictly track. As you can see with the tires, see how they're peeled? And that's from the heat generated off the track. As you can see, he's got rear suspension. He's got adjustable rear sets. And these tires are really peeled. Tail section's one piece. There's a few issues here. Right here, see all that gunk? That's brake fluid. I don't know why it's doing that. We're gonna pull that apart, see what's happening there. You definitely need brakes for the track. So, and you see he's got it safety wired here. This is safety wire. If you look down here, this is your bottom fairing, and this is one piece also. And you see how it's kind of like a cup? And that's in case the oil starts draining out, it'll catch most of it in the bottom of that. You know, the track is mostly a safety issue. They make sure that if somebody's bike is leaking something or they crash, that someone else isn't going to crash because they were leaking something or something fell off. Well, I'm going to get it inside and start working on it. The reserve tank's held in by an 8mm bolt. Gonna pull that out. Okay, there's your 8mm bolt. And if you noticed on my sockets, I always put a little piece of blue tape underneath the socket itself. When you're doing stuff like this, the socket has a tendency to pull off the extension, and then it drops down in there and you're gonna have to find that. Now that I got that loosened, this is on a rubber hose. And there's your reservoir. As you can see, it's pretty crusty. Looks like it's got a little heat on there. Somebody rode this thing pretty hard, and it's just got a lot of gunk and corrosion on that. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the two top Phillips. There are Phillips bolts. Yeah, there's so much grime in there that there's dirt inside the Phillips screw. And anytime you're dealing with any kind of brake fluid or fluid itself, I mean, it's gonna get messy. So get some old rags. That was your cover. This is your diaphragm holder. And this is your diaphragm. There's lots of dirt and grime in the bottom of this. And it's even crystallized around the top here. I'm gonna clean that out. And when you're doing a brake system, especially on a race bike, you want to clean out the entire system. A lot of people will just clean this out, put a new brake fluid in it, bleed it a little bit. You want to get the entire system cleaned out. Because once again, these are your brakes, folks. These things fail, it's not good news. I've noticed right here, it looks like it got melted somehow, and this is why it's not sealing properly. You have the diaphragm that fits in here, and this builds pressure inside here, sort of like a vacuum. And what's happening is it's not making a complete seal because there's just not enough material there for it to seal. What's happening is the bike will have brake pressure, but then it'll lose pressure after a while because it's sucking air through there. So we're gonna have the new part. which is brand new, OEM. Anytime you can use OEM stuff, please do. Lasts a long time and it's the best quality. So I'm going to pull this off right here. This is just a cap. Keep any kind of contaminants or dust in there. And that's what it looks like. The old one, the new one. First thing I'm going to do is we have some brake fluid in here. Just going to dump that out. And once again, whenever you do any kind of brake job, it's just going to get all over the place. So use an old towel. We're going to take pliers. And we have a clamp right here. We're going to move that out of the way. And what I'll do is hold on to the reservoir, hold on to the hose, and if you just kind of twist it, you'll hear it snap a little bit. Because this one has definitely been on there for a while. This is probably the stock one. And it doesn't take too much. Once again, take your time. You have to work it a little bit. And there you go. I'm going to put the new one on. Goes on a lot easier than the old one came off. We're going to take our pliers. And we're going to put the clamp back on. And if the clamp has been on there for a while, you'll notice that there's indentations right here from the clamp. You want to kind of put the clamp right back where it was so it matches up. It'll just hold a lot better. And now I'm going to go ahead, open the reservoir up. Here's the old one. You can see the difference. A lot of corrosion on this one. The new brake reservoir will come with a new diaphragm cover. There's a little spacer in there, which is the white one here. And 2 brand new Phillips head bolts. Now that I have that on, I'm going to pour in the brake fluid. And you don't want to fill this too full. A lot of times people think that, you know, the fuller it is, the better braking you're going to get. You want to leave a little space in there, and that's why there's the lines on the side here. And this tells you your fluid level. We're going to fill it to the top up there. And that would be the top line. And I'm going to snug this down. And not too tight. And there we go. Now that I've addressed the rear brake reservoir, back here, you notice there's a lot of crystallization and brake fluid. It looks like it's leaking out of the brake line here. I'm going to pull this banjo bolt out and replace these washers, and then bleed the system and see if we get any leaks. Now, if these banjo bolts and these crush washers have any air inside here, you're definitely going to lose pressure in your brakes. You can see it's leaking pretty good right there. It should not be like that. This banjo bolt right here is a 14. And like I've told you before, you can use an impact to take bolts off, but when you're dealing with any kind of brakes, something that's somewhat delicate, you definitely want to use hand tools on that. So here you have your banjo bolt. as you see, you have holes in here, right in the middle of that. You have 2 crush washers. And these crush washers look like they're just crushed too much. I'm going to replace those. Bleed the system, see what happens. This brake fluid looks really old too. And when you're doing any kind of brake fluid, make sure you put a lot of towels down. Brake fluid just gets everywhere. This is your brake line right here. This is your caliper. I'm going to put 1 crush washer on first. Put it through the brake line. Put it here. And then I always thread it by hand first. You don't want to use any hand tools yet, because these threads are very, very, very fine. Once again, you have steel, which is your banjo bolt, going into a cast aluminum. So you want to make sure that you don't strip that. Then I'm going to use a hand tool. Just your socket. I'm going to get it on there, but we're not going to say a quarter turn after that. This is your bleed screw. There's usually a rubber piece on here that keeps dirt, dust, and contaminants from getting in there. Most of the time it's either an 8 or 10 millimeter. And since there's already air in the line, we're just going to crack this open. What I'll usually use is a one-way bleeder tool. And this one even has a little arrow on it showing you which direction the fluid's going. Takes a little bit to get this on there. And that's what it should look like. I'm going to go back over to the rear brake pedal and just start pumping. As you can see, fluid is starting to come out. Ooh. And that brake fluid is definitely really old. You're most likely going to have to fill this thing 2 or 3 times. You want to keep that as upright as possible. And we're going to continue. And that brake fluid looks like it's getting nice and clear. So now that the brake fluid's nice and clear coming out of there, I'm going to take the 8 millimeter open end wrench, and I'm just going to tighten this down just a little bit. Not all the way. I'm going to continue to pump the rear brake. And now we have brake pressure. I'm going to let that sit a little bit and then check for any leaks. But it looks like that solved the problem. And that's how to bleed the rear brakes. 2007 GSX-R1000 track bike.